My name is Darren Hupke, and this is Pixels and Polygons. Hey everyone, welcome to a new episode. I've got a returning guest on the show, Aidan Moher, from a lot of stuff, from the new podcast Fun Factor. If you haven't listened to that, subscribe to that. That's a rad show. And the writer of some great books, some great things you've probably read online, a lot of great stuff, and some upcoming projects as well. We've had him on the show in the past. He's been a favorite guest for sure, and I look forward to having him again in the future. So enjoy the conversation we have together after the break. We share the evergreen question of what is an average game or an underappreciated game that doesn't get enough attention. So it's always fun to hear my guests answer that question. So skip ahead if you'd like and just jump right into the show. If not, I got some business for you. Speaking of Aidan, he is a contributor towards the new issue of Retro Game Zine, the May issue, which is out right now. It covers Breath of Fire 4. You can purchase that right now on patreon.com/DarrenHupke/shop. I believe is the whole link. It's going to be in the show notes. You can click the links down there as well. You can buy a digital copy of it for $3. I have physical copies, and by the time this episode releases, I will have them physically in hand, ready to ship, so you can go over to pixelsandpolygons.net to buy a physical copy. That issue came together great. It was the first issue where I have the new cover art commissioned for the zine itself, so take a look at the cool Rise Spirit inspired artwork for the cover, as well as some more great retro game zine goodness. Aidan came in with a real cool article on just kind of like the rise and influence of like the empire of the story and the series of Breath of Fire, and just a cool article that's not just a review or an analysis piece like I typically do myself. So it was fun to work with him, and it'll be great to work with him again in the future for sure on some future issues. I'm sure that's something we can arrange. But otherwise, I already kind of mentioned the spaces, but pixelsandpolygons.net for physical books, patreon.com for digital stuff and original writings, and yeah, I've got some other stuff cooking for the podcast. You may hear about some of the stuff here in the near future. Some things we're doing with some partners, and some fun things to look forward to. So, yeah, be on the lookout for that. Follow me on Blue Sky at pixelsandpolygons.net, at darrenhupke.bsky.social, and check out the show notes below for all of my stuff, but also links to Aidan stuff as well. For now, enjoy the episode. I'll catch you again next week, and we'll hopefully have another great episode to listen to. Have a good one. Bye.
Hello, we are Kirby Conversations, a podcast on Kirby, along with other adjacent subjects like Smash Brothers, HAL Laboratory, and other related Nintendo games.
In each episode, we take an in-depth, well-researched look at a Kirby topic, drawing on our decades of experience playing Kirby games, creating Kirby-related content, and working in and around the video game industry. I'm Sean Douglas. I'm a theater and video game journalist.
And my name's Bridget. I'm an online Kirby commentator and collector.
Our team also includes photographer and Nintendo ambassador Kai Captain Dangerous Parker, and Gigi, the editor-in-chief of Wick Kirby. Join us for deep dives into Kirby's history, interviews with industry professionals, and even inside looks at Nintendo, as together we explore all things Kirby and HAL Laboratory. You can find Kirby Conversations on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Welcome to another episode of the show, Pixels and Polygons, my conversational podcast about video games. Another returning guest again. We have Aidan Moher on the show again. Welcome. How are you?
Hi, it's good. It feels like I just recorded one of these, but it's days or weeks or months later.
Thank you for breaking the fourth wall there for me. It has been minutes after we recorded the last one, but you might be listening to this weeks after we recorded. Who knows?
The magic of podcasting.
Well, welcome back again, even though I've already welcomed you today.
Thank you.
So let me ask you, are you playing any, or is there a game, because this will be a 2025 episode, guaranteed.
Okay.
So is there a 2025 game coming out this year that you're looking forward to? Is there like an anticipated game that you want to play?
Oh man, the big ones for me are the two like PlayStation RPG remasters coming out in the next few months. The Suikoden remaster, so Suikoden 1 and 2, and then the Lunar remaster. Those are two of my favorite series of all time. Two of my some of my favorite games of all time. Lunar and Suikoden 2 are like in my top 3 or top 5 of favorite games of all time. I'm just like praying that the ports and the remasters are good. Because they, retro remasters of some of these games just can go so far in either direction. Like we had stuff like, Gung Ho, who's doing the Lunar remaster. They also did the Grandia remaster, and it was not great for a lot of avoidable reasons. And so I just hoping, fingers crossed, that they both turn out really good. I've been holding off playing through the original versions of both of those series for a while now. Actually, that's not true. I was playing through Suikoden like last year, but I can always go back to the originals, but I would love for those to have great modern, versions that are accessible to lots of people. And if I can get those on Switch and they run great on Switch, and I can play Suikoden 1 and 2 and Lunar 1 and 2 on the go, like that's it for me. Like that's just can't get better unless it's like a Chrono Trigger. Just like release Chrono Trigger. It doesn't have to be a remaster. It doesn't have to be a remake. Like I don't need any of that. Don't want any of that. Just make Chrono Trigger accessible. But like for, up until this year, it would have been like make Chrono Trigger, Suikoden, and Lunar accessible for modern audiences. And so, 2 out of 3. Yeah, we'll get to Chrono Trigger.
Yeah, I like that they have 1 and 2 together. It seems like you're going to be able to do the save import feature and everything between the two. I'm hoping. I was reading some something online about like people really comparing like the first trailer for it to like the most recent trailer they did, and like you can see they've done like UI improvements and things like that I think help make it look cleaner. Like I was worried, same thing for like, is it just going to be like, hey, we have the same like skeleton of it, but we're just going to like redraw these assets and make them really like soft and muddy, like AI upscales. Like, is it going to like, is there something that's going to have like a stink on it here? Like, I don't want any of that. And like, so far it does not seem like that's the case. And I'm really hoping it's not. Like the battle system already had like a really good pace to it in the Suikoden games. So I'm hoping that kind of stays. And like I'm really jazzed for those, like that set there. The Lunar games, I had only played for the first time when I was doing my last book. I had to skip them. I played them like the first one briefly, just for a little bit, like back on the PlayStation 1, like a friend had it and I was like, oh, let me start this up. And the start of the game wasn't as quick, and like I think we were getting ready to play something else anyway, so it was like, oh, I'll come back to this, and just never did as a child. But like I'm excited to actually dive into those and everything as well. And I think that the second one, doesn't get as much dialogue. I mean, I guess it does for Lunar fans, but like it essentially just continues on like the same like gameplay and mechanic and design, but just like with an even newer story and everything. It's like 100 years or something after.
Yeah, it's cool. It's set like way after, and so you travel the world and it's familiar, but things have changed, and it really kind of ties into like what happened in the first game and how like the events of that game changed the way the world functions. And so you go to like, a city that was like a floating big magical city in the sky in the first game, and in the second game it's like, a dilapidated ruin at ground level and that kind of stuff. Like I'm just such a sucker for that. Like I love time skips in games, and you don't get a lot of series that build on themselves that way. And Suikoden and Lunar are two of the best examples, I think, of games that, like allow time to pass and allow, like an ongoing sort of storyline to happen. The Trails series would be another good one, I think. But yeah, so those two remasters, those are the two for me this year that I'm really excited about. Cool. And then whatever Nintendo is doing on Switch 2. Switch 2 like got revealed looks cool, looks like a better Switch, but like the real draw, of course, is Nintendo games, right? First party Nintendo games. What are they going to do with that? And, you know, like, I just want them to show off some games that aren't just Mario Kart 8 2 or whatever was in the little teaser trailer.
Yeah.
Not that Mario Kart 8, you know, remastered or whatever they're going to put out on Switch 2 isn't going to be great, but like, I want the new stuff.
Yeah. I think the things I love most about Nintendo, I've not completely like thawed on my frustration with them that I had a few years back. I water damaged a 3DS, and so like I held it against them that I couldn't get my data and information back and everything.
Yeah.
So, but like what I love about Nintendo is, yes, like their big AAA like pillars, of course, are always great, and they always reinvent themselves, and they always feel fresh. Like they always do a great job with those, but they also take a chance on like weird like early generation things that like are like showcases of like how the hardware works and everything, and like you're always very surprised by like, I didn't know what this was, but like, sure, like, yeah, okay, sign me up, I'll take more of this. And so Switch 2, like there obviously will be some new features that we don't quite know about right now at the moment, but I'm just curious to see what they'll do you know, once it finally hits, because they always can surprise you. It's you buy Nintendo hardware for Nintendo games, you know. I think the Switch benefited from also being an amazing place to like play third party and like indie games as well. And they felt that financial success too, so that helps them. But Nintendo's stuff is what you're here for. So, well, let's do this or that. This or that, Monster Rancher or Monster Hunter?
Man, neither. I've never really gotten into either of them, but you know what? Actually, I can't say that because we did play Monster Rancher back in high school, and the audio CD stuff way back in the day was cool. And like, I don't know if people really know this, but like Monster Rancher was sort of in that Pokemon, Digimon, like realm of like, you know, collecting and battling cute little monsters. But Monster Rancher's big thing on the PlayStation when we were playing it is you could take your game on PlayStation, you would take the game out at the appropriate time and put an audio CD in. So you could put in Smash by The Offspring, and it would take that audio data on the CD, and it would create like a unique monster from that unique audio data. And then so you'd have your monster based on the Smash CD by The Offspring, and then you could take that out and you could put in like a Les and Jake album, Hello Rockview, and it would create a new monster based on your favorite album. And so like, you know, whatever they were doing, whatever algorithm was going on behind the scenes to create these monsters, like, you know, who knows how sophisticated it was, but it was kind of neat having monsters that were sort of, you know, like quote unquote based on your favorite albums. Because music was like, it came out around the same time that music was really starting to like, you know, have a big part of our identity in high school way back when. So I haven't kept up with the series. Obviously, they're not doing audio CD generated monsters in later iterations, but the audio stuff was cool. So you know what? I take back my original answer of neither. Monster Rancher, pretty cool because it was doing completely insane things in the mid 90s.
Yeah, I think it's a cool concept. I always wondered how they did that. I wonder if they just looked at like, what is the storage on the disk? Like, oh, was there, you know, 480 megabytes of data on this? Like, okay, so 480 will reference this table and this will be the monster for it. And like, you know, anything in this spectrum will be this monster.
There must be some like unique hash on every CD or something that like, it's got to be like just one little bit of data or something, because it wasn't like it streamed the music.
Yeah.
You know, it's not VibRibbon, where it would stream the music and then create the level based off like the actual audio data, like the levels in the music. It was just like, it would rev up and it would just grab something off those CDs to use as like a variable and within some sort of algorithm. But it was cool. Seemed fun at the time, having your favorite album beaten up on your friend's favorite album or whatever.
All right. Well, let's jump into the icebreaker here. What was the last arcade game you played? And so not like an arcade game ported to a handheld or a system, but like a physical cabinet, you know, whether it was a gimmicky one or not. What was the last arcade game you played?
Oh, gosh. I don't even know. It would have been probably before the pandemic started. So over 5 years ago. And they probably would have been, oh, you know what? Actually, no, I do know what it was. It was that new version of Gauntlet from like 1997 or whatever, the 4-player 3D one. Just before the pandemic started, we went out to an arcade in Victoria, BC, and they had a bunch of a ton of games, and we all played a bunch of Gauntlet 3D 4-player. So that's probably I think that was probably the last one I played that night. So that would have been the last one I played. And then otherwise, playing them on Hydro Thunder on the ferry, because I live in BC, so I ride the ferries a lot. They always seem to have Hydro Thunder. That's another one that was
like on the
sort of a mainstay.
On the ferry.
Yeah, they'd be, yeah. There's like, it's like a 2 hour and a half ferry ride. And so they have an little arcade, like 7 little machines or whatever. But yeah, Hydro Thunder on the ferry was always a mainstay well after Hydro Thunder was, long gone from other arcades or malls or whatever.
Sure.
But yeah, Gauntlet 3D, Hydro Thunder. That's probably it.
Okay. Yeah, that was that got ported, I think. Like there's 64 and stuff. I think that same game got ported.
Is it called Gauntlet 3D? Let's see. Yeah.
It might just be called Gauntlet. 3D. I know there was a follow-up called Gauntlet Dark Legacy. That is in my brain.
Gauntlet Legends might have been the one that I was playing, yeah.
Okay. But then I think the sequel...
Let's see. 1998 Atari. Yeah, Gauntlet Legends is the one I was that I was playing.
Okay,
yeah, arcade, Nintendo 64, PlayStation, Dreamcast. Yeah, that's the one. Gauntlet Legends.
Is the sequel Dark Legacy? Does it say that?
That's it's an expansion pack called Gauntlet Dark Legacy. So same game.
I think they released that as a standalone game for
they might have
double dippers on console.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. I wanted to confirm I had some memory that was accurate.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? That one came out on PlayStation 2, GameCube, Xbox. So like the next generation up of consoles. And so they probably just released the whole game under the Dark Legacy title or whatever. Yeah.
That makes
sense. It's a good one. Yeah. The arcade games are just wild because they're just like, they're designed so that you just die over and over again, right? Like they're just like, it's just like a little timer ticking down on the screen. And if you're not like extremely good at them, you just feed quarters into that machine or loonies now. And just the game design, that style of game design is just long gone at this point.
I always hated that balance when that was like, that illusion was shattered for me as a kid. Like I always thought like if you just had skill, you could essentially play the game forever, or like skill does help you play it a little bit longer, but the scales are so like tipped to one side that you are like you are going to lose and have to put in more money. Like there's not a way for you to start to finish.
If you're a normal person, right? Like there are people there that can like play Pac-Man endlessly or whatever, but they are like savants that I certainly couldn't ever get to even close to that level. But the scales and the game design is so tipped towards like eventually like you're just gonna die and have to feed it more quarters because that's how the games made money, right? If people could get good enough to play them indefinitely on one quarter, then the model would collapse.
Okay, we did it. We're now in the main feature of the episode. The question is one of my favorite ones, the evergreen question. I like this one a lot because obviously whoever the guest is, like this is a unique and special question because you all draw from it from very different places. So for you, Aidan, what is a personal favorite game or an average game that you love that doesn't get enough attention?
I thought long and hard about making The Hobbit on like the GameCube and PlayStation 2 my choice here because it's like
the book licensed one, not the movie licensed one.
The book licensed one, the book licensed one. So all like unique art. It's a 3D level based platformer. It's not great, but I love it. But I haven't played it in a long time, and so it's hard for me to talk about beyond that little like it's not great, but I love it spiel. What I really want to talk about is a game that's probably as far from Gauntlet Legends as you can get. The complete opposite. It's for the Nintendo DS. It's called Hotel Dusk, and it's a visual novel detective story that you play on the Nintendo DS, but you play it in book mode. So you turn the DS sideways, and on the left screen, you have a 3D representation of what your main character is seeing. And on the right screen, which is the touch screen, you use a stylus, you have a little map, and you use that to move around the environment. Very, simple, low poly 3D environments. And a lot like any other visual novel, you move around this environment. There's people to talk to. There's things you can interact with. You collect items, and slowly through dialogue trees and presenting people with items, you can, make your way through the story. And Hotel Dusk is just one of the most unique experiences I've had in gaming, period. And I just don't know that a lot of people know about it. and it hasn't ever, been re-released. It's not something that, like sort of has any ubiquity in terms of, conversation and gaming. And I wish more people knew about it, because it has this like detective noir style. The main character, Kyle Hyde, is this sort of like goofy late 20s detective guy. He meets up with a whole lot of weirdos, as he's in this hotel trying to solve, a crime that's happened. You get a lot of like internalized conflict with Kyle as he's trying to solve this, which I think is really interesting. But all of the characters that he talks to along the way are all interesting and flawed and complex and have conflict in a way that, like, visual novels are so good at. But there's something about Hotel Dusk and the way that it eschews a lot of, like, the visual identity of a lot of visual novels. Like, it's not an anime game. It's drawn in this like pencil sketch style. Mm-hmm. So you have the main character, you have all the characters, and they're all like pencil sketches, and their animation is sort of this like herky jerky like pencil sketch animation that just works really well in a really unique way to create a tone and a texture that I've never seen in any other game. Even like, so the developers Sing went on to create another code, which recently got like a re-release or a remaster on Switch. And it's also really good. I really like it. But it just kind of lacked a lot of the personality and a lot of the, I don't want to use maturity, because I think that's such a cheap kind of shorthand for saying like it's, sort of a grown up story, but it is a story about adults solving like adult problems. And so it has this sort of gray tone to it, this dark, not dark as in like dark and like, ooh, spooky and evil, dark as in like you're in this kind of dark, dingy roadside motel that has a, just like its very own personality. And the way that Kyle kind of moves about this space, interacting with it is something that stuck with me ever since I played the first game. And then there was a sequel called Last Window that never actually came out in North America, also for the DS. Very similar, but it's set at like Kyle's apartment building, so you're moving through like multiple floors, talking to all his neighbors, people with that stronger personal connection to him. But it was released in Europe with an English version, so there's a fully English version. I ended up buying a German copy of the game because it was a lot cheaper than buying a UK copy. Bought a German copy, comes with a full English translation, so I was able to play through most of that. I haven't beat it. It's actually sitting on my desk and right in front of me. But it kind of continues the story in an interesting way that ties back into the first game, but stands alone in its own ways. And I just wish we had more of that. I wish we could see, like a revival of that series, not in the way that like Another Code took the original games on Wii and DS and turned them into like a newer style 3D visual novel. But like, I want like everything about Hotel Dusk to come back the way it was, you gotta retain the like the pencil sketch, the pencil sketch portraits. You gotta retain sort of the language and the tone and the tenor that Kyle speaks with, and the way that he interacts with people around the world. Like, all of that is like so vital to the game. And the Another Code games have some of that in their own way. But Ashley, the main character, that is a lot younger. She's a teenager in both of the games, and so that is charming in its own way, but not it just didn't really scratch the same itch that I had with the Hotel Dusk games.
Yeah, Hotel Dusk, I remember buying that, day one. I just the design of it and the look of it. I think I don't know how far removed it was from like the Brain Age era as well, but like finding that inventive use of like using your DS in like a fun way and everything. I loved the visual style of it and everything. Like, it was just different. It was new. I alluded to it kind of at the start of our conversation, at the start of the episode, about like just Nintendo, like, seeing and doing, funky things. Like, I know they weren't the developer here, but they decided to publish this because I think they saw something special in how that was utilizing like their hardware in just a different way. I remember just not knowing much about it. And so I wasn't sure if there was going to be horror elements. I wasn't sure like where it was going to go. And I think just having that like unease, like it wasn't like an uncomfortable tension, but it was just like, it was like watching Twin Peaks for the first time. You're like, there's some weird stuff here, but there's some cool stuff here. Like, where is this going? Like, I'm just going to enjoy this ride and like see how this is. And
unease is such a good word for it, because like, especially as like we play a lot of games. We're always like, if you have a background in RPGs like I do, you're always expecting the answer to be like supernatural shenanigans, right? And that's eventually sort of where a game like, or a series like Another Code goes. It introduces stuff like ghosts, but like the whole time you're playing Hotel Dusk, you're like, oh, when's the monster going to pop out? When is this going to turn out to be, some supernatural thing? And it never does, but that sense of unease is always there. It reminds me of the game Gone Home in the same way, that the whole time, like in Gone Home, I kept kind of thinking like, okay, when is something going to jump out at me? Like, when is this going to turn into like, a psychological horror, a supernatural horror type like story? And that unease like sat within me for the whole game. And I remember that with Hotel Dusk. That's all gone in Last Window because you kind of know the gist of it.
Yeah.
But it was such a interesting thing to experience, especially on a handheld console at that time, to have that sort of emotion in a game. Wasn't something that I was really familiar with 20 years ago or whenever it came out.
I feel there was the same. I had a similar vibe with Trace Memory shortly after this. It was also
Trace Memory is one of the Another Code games. It had a name change, but same.
Okay.
So
I didn't realize that. Yeah, there was a connection
Trace
to
Memory was like the US, like the North American title, but when it was remade as Another Code Recollection or whatever for the Switch.
Okay, cool.
So same idea.
So I'm learning some stuff this episode. Yeah, I didn't realize there was that sequel. I mean, I knew that there was a sequel, but I just knew it never came to America. I didn't know there was like a European release and a potential to like play and experience it and everything. But but the problem is it's on, the DS hardware is not easy to like, like legitimately like port to like modern consoles and everything. So, I mean, rumors of like some Switch 2 potential like workings and all that stuff. Like I've heard that there's a chance that there could be like playable DS games on it somehow, whether it's like with the TV and handheld together, like Wii U style type of thing. But I would be on board for that. If they made a system where they could port 3DS games for their like Nintendo online service, like give me more of that. Curiously looking at it, I'm clicking on links and everything from Last Window. There was a spiritual successor called Chase, Cold Case Investigation, Distant Memories, very long name. It has a colon and a hyphen, but it was developed by Arc System Works and released in 2016 with many of the former developers of Sing working on the game, which is interesting to read. But then I decided to click into Sing to see their other games. And as you mentioned, like you shared a few of the games they've already made. Did you know in between Hotel Dusk in 2007 and Another Code in 2009, they released another DS game for published by Tecmo? Do you have any idea what this game could be?
Is that the Jake Hunter game?
No.
Is that what it is? No.
This is Monster Hunter or Monster Rancher DS.
No.
They developed Monster Rancher DS according to Wikipedia. This has come full circle.
Did you know that when you asked that question earlier?
No, I did not. I had no idea. That is just the mystery of Room 215, appearing before us.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
So random that's the case that they helped develop that DS version of Monster Rancher.
Yeah. Oh, Another Code came before Hotel Dusk. Interesting. I'm looking at the Wikipedia now too. But Another Code and Hotel Dusk and Another Code
Memory.
are okay. Interesting. Sing was cool. I think like all of their games were interesting. Like Little King's Story was another really interesting game that I think I miss that era when there was like a lot of like when I think the cost for creating games wasn't as astronomical, and so you could have companies like Sing taking chances and exploring interesting design space within like like the console world and on handhelds in a way that doesn't really happen as much anymore. Like there's a lot more homogenization these days in games, at least in the kind of AAA space. Yeah. Or at least, outside of the indie space. Right. And like, you just you don't get games designed like Hotel Dusk anymore. I think we've lost a lot when we let go of like gaming first portables, like adopting phones or getting Steam Decks. Or even the Switch just isn't quite the same, right? Like when we had single purpose devices just for gaming and they created game design experiences for that, we opened up such an interesting world of game design that's gone. And, like even if they do create something like the Another Code remaster is a good example of the fact that they threw out a lot of the the Wii design, which was like a side scroller. It was weird. And like the original DS design, and just created something that felt more like a generic like third person little like adventure game that felt more modern, more homogenized, like it lost a lot of the interesting mid-aughts game design that defined those original titles. And I'd hate to see the same thing happen to Hotel Dusk. Like, I don't want to see Hotel Dusk just put into the shell of a generic 3D visual novel. Like, I want to see how we can go back to that design space that was so exploratory in the mid-aughts and continue to like create new games in that mold.
I guess one final note here. Ashley, in her Another Code R variation, has appeared in the Super Smash Bros. Ultimate iteration of the Nintendo crossover fighting series, Super Smash Bros. Well, I did not know that either.
No.
What?
Maybe she could help me in Smash Bros. If I was thrust into the Smash Bros. Tournament. Yeah.
That was our last episode. So that was months ago or weeks ago.
Oh no, that was months, weeks, hours, years.
Whatever it was that folks were listening to it. Cool. Yeah, I got some homework. I do want to play. I'd love to just play Hotel Dusk again, but jumping into that sequel, I would like to give that a shot and maybe even give a chance at that spiritual successor that Arc System Works made. I think it'd be kind of cool. But yeah, they don't make them like that anymore, and it would be nice if they did.
It would be nice if they did.
I feel like the indie space is growing into that. Like, I mean, there's a lot of these, like, I mean, they're like horror adjacent, but like, they emulate like the Nintendo 64 and PS1 style of things just because, again, like assets and engines and things like Unity and these like middlewares that like people with like less experience can jump into and still kind of create and navigate through that space. It's not far off to think that, maybe smaller collectives and like little groups of like an indie team or a little, small scale like developer, can do PS2 Wii quality style games or even like DS style games for sure. It doesn't seem like it's far off, and that would be really rad to see that kind of come to fruition soon.
One of my favorite spaces right now is all the like people making Game Boy games using what's it called?
GB Studio.
There's an app. Yeah, GB Studio. I think that space is
Have
fascinating.
I tried to download that many times myself?
I've messed around with it, and like I don't know what I'm doing, but the tools are there to just create Game Boy games that play on original hardware, can implement sort of modern game design ideas and quality of life stuff, but at the same time are still bound by the technical limitations of the Game Boy or the Game Boy Color is just so fascinating to me. And I love going on itch and just downloading and finding all these modern Game Boy games that feel like nothing else out there in 2025. Like, and when you have people who grew up with these systems designing new games for them, it's a fascinating space that I hope we continue to see more of that, and recognizing that like technical limitations and game design limitations of the past, like they aren't limitations. They're like, they're I don't even know how to explain it, but like you hear
it's like
about
a color palette for an artist, like
yeah, exactly. Like canvas has never become not like a good like canvas for for painting just because there's new stuff around, right? Like, oil paints haven't been replaced or pastels or charcoal hasn't been replaced just because we have markers, right? And it's the same thing with game design. Like you hear a lot about how the older video games, like the creativity that comes out of technical limitations can create better experiences in the end. Yeah. And you hear that a lot from, like if you go look around a lot of like old mid 90s, early 90s video game interviews, they talk a lot about the limitations and the things they have to get through and the way that game design is sort of defined by those and how that's actually a positive rather than just being able to do whatever you want, having infinite possibilities, and how that creates more issues in a lot of ways than limitations.
Yeah. Setting up boundaries, isn't a bad thing. Like it helps maybe focus or refocus what it is your end goal might be, or put up parameters that help you like finish and finalize like a vision that you have. And so giving yourself technical limitations doesn't mean it's a quality sacrifice or anything. It's just, it might actually even help you just be more focused in what your end goal may be. And we need some of that. Yeah. Cause especially with, this day and age, like our hardware can do so much and, it doesn't always need to. Like, no, like there are ways to be entertained and have this. Like, I mean, I bought that Playdate, that little handheld from like Panic and all that stuff. And like same thing. Like it's just like, hey, here's people. People who know exactly how to do like amazing, like bigger scale, like games and all that stuff. Like what if we had some limitations and some boundaries? What if we were limited to just this? And you can still have a ton of fun with that. Like,
like what's Lucas Pope going to do with, two colors, black and white, on a little like limited inputs, little screen, and like you get stuff that just couldn't and would never exist outside of that. And I think that's great. And I hope we just continue to see an expansion in the indie space of like people figuring out ways to create game experiences that don't rely on immense commercial growth, like potential. Because that's where AAA is going, right? Like, and I think that we all sort of feel uncomfortable about the direction of AAA and how it's, trying to hit infinite growth through tools that don't support that, and how we're starting to see, so many layoffs happening, so many, like games canceled. And now like you have games as a service games that are getting canceled because that, surprisingly, shock, didn't create infinite growth for these companies. And games needs to be more than that. And I think that that's where the indie space and indie creators come in. And what I want to see in all spaces where you have sort of independent creators is like, let's do what we can as fans of the industry and these games to support creators directly, and find the creators who are creating the experiences we want, support them on Patreon, buy games directly from them, like do what we can monetarily to support the people creating stuff so that they can continue to create great stuff without having to go find a publisher that wants it to make, unreasonable amounts of money.
Yeah, you want to keep the band together so they can continue to make the music that you enjoy. But if you have the band join 147 other musicians and then you start to like pull out some of them and remove some of them, like, is it even the same thing you want anymore? Like, no, we got to give them, like, let the band stay together. Let's keep them funded and financed to create, that next thing they're working on, and you don't shut them down just because something isn't what you wanted it to be. Like, it can be, and it will be if you give them time and space. And, maybe it won't be either, but like the investment has to be there to let the artistic side of it happen, not just the expectation of the profit side of thing. Like, it's not a hit, shut it down, move on. And now you're just like breaking the fabric of it all. And we're at a crossroads for sure. All right. Well, we did the thing and we answered the question and we completed the episode.
Excellent.
We've gained some experience points and we've leveled up. That's all I've got. Anything? I mean, I'll have your links to your sites and your handles and all that jazz in the show notes below as well, so folks can follow you. So I encourage you to do so. And any final words or final thoughts, Aidan, before we head out?
Thanks for having me. I always love being able to come on and talk about games like Hotel Dusk or, like games that don't necessarily get space a lot of the time in the conversation. And I know Hotel Dusk has a lot of fans, but, creating that sort of space where we get to deep dive into a game that's 17 years old, a sequel never even made it over here is great. It's just a pleasure always.
Yeah. Rad. All right. Well, we'll have you on in the future for sure. I appreciate you coming back on.
Yeah. Anytime.
You have a good one. Take it easy.
Thanks. You too.
Listen to Flashback 64, the chronological Nintendo 64 podcast. Hosts Gooey, McKenna, and friends flashback to the 90s and early 2000s with a look at the Nintendo 64's catalog and its contemporary cultural and historical context. Starting with the console's launch titles and proceeding in release order, we discuss classics like GoldenEye, Super Mario 64, and Star Fox 64, as well as some not-so-beloved games, lesser-known titles, and everything in between. Along with game-specific deep dives, we also cover other bits of pop culture from the time, like films, music, and more. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.